Hello and welcome. Celebrate the season of growth and opportunity with Canada Business Talks. Now, as the holidays approach, there is no better time to reflect, learn, and prepare for a prosperous new year. Take your business strategy to new heights with insights from Canadian business leaders through our Inspiring series. We proudly bring this to you in collaboration with our exclusive partners, RBC as our banking partner, UPS as our shipping partner, Constant Contact as our email partner, IHG Business Edge as our hospitality partner, and Google Canada as our technology partner. Hello and an official welcome to everyone. I'm Alyssa Lansdell, your media host for Canadian SME Business Magazine. I am the founder of Rockstar Communications, and I founded it in 2020 as a way to unite my distinct passions and strengths in the leadership communication and media space. Since 2011, I have had the privilege and pleasure of helping hundreds of leaders across the globe influence their teams and stakeholders with authenticity and impact. Now, first, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather and on which the region of Peel operates is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. At Canadian SME, our mission is to equip aspiring entrepreneurs with the resources, tools, and insights they need to start and grow their businesses in Canada. Now, we're committed to supporting small-scale entrepreneurs, driving economic growth, and enhancing Canada's global reputation. Through our magazine, we celebrate the hard work and achievements of entrepreneurs, helping them gain the recognition they deserve. Our events, like the SME Awards, the Small Business Show, and the Small Business Summit, provide invaluable opportunities for small business owners to share their journeys and inspire others. 2 years ago, we reached an important milestone with the launch of Indigenous SME Business Magazine. This publication underscores our dedication to honoring the unique histories and contributions of Indigenous communities. Together, through Canadian SME and Indigenous SME Business Magazine, we remain focused on empowering and uplifting Canada's diverse small business community. I would like to welcome you to Canada Business Talks, where we are committed to fostering growth and success in the business world. In collaboration with esteemed partners like RBC, UPS, Constant Contact, IHG Business Edge, and Google, we bring you insights from top Canadian business leaders to elevate your ventures and inspire you. Our esteemed guest today, you're going to love him, David Sinkinson, is a proven SaaS entrepreneur. David was the co-founder and CEO of AppArmor, the bootstrapped public safety software startup he led with his brother Chris. Now, AppArmor was purchased by Rave Mobile Safety in February of 2022 for $40 million. Later in 2022, both Rave Mobility Safety and AppArmor were acquired by Motorola Solutions for $560 million. So join us as we delve into an insightful conversation with David Sinkinson and explore the pathways to success in entrepreneurship. Let's embark on that journey of transformation together, transformation and growth, shaping a more diverse and prosperous business landscape for all. Before we do that, I would like to thank our sponsors today, our banking partner, RBC, our shipping partner, UPS, our exclusive email sponsor, Constant Contact, our hospitality partner, IHG Business Edge, and our tech partner, Google. Now, if you're a small business owner in Canada, this is exciting. You can apply to be featured as the UPS Small Business of the Day. Every day, Canadian SME Small Business Magazine, with support from UPS, our exclusive shipping partner, features a different small business on our social media channels. As the UPS Small Business of the Day, you will receive free promotion on Canadian SME social media channels, and you can apply now by visiting canadiansme.ca. All right, let's take a quick break and see what's in store for you by our exclusive partners.
Hey, You think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
Four billion people check their email every day. That's 4 billion missed opportunities if your message doesn't make it. To reach your customer's inbox, you need a winning strategy. And Constant Contact delivers. Literally, over 97% deliverability. Elevate your email game with easy-to-use templates, writing assistants powered by AI, and in-depth metrics. Ensuring your email is flawless, delivered, and read. Constant Contact delivers. Give it a try.
At IHG Hotels Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in,
connect, and recharge.
make an impression,
and meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
your business gets even more rewarding.
With an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.
All right, I would like to welcome our RBC spokesperson, Chris Germano. Chris is a vice president with RBCX. RBCX is the tech and innovation banking arm of RBC, helping tech companies scale and make an impact on the world by connecting them to the right people, ideas, and financial solutions. Chris has had the privilege of working with some of Canada's most exciting high-growth tech companies as they look to scale past Series A and beyond. Chris and his team at RBCX aim to redefine the role of financial institutions in supporting founders and strive to be a driving force in establishing Canada as a global leader in technology and innovation. Pleasure to have you here, Chris. Welcome.
Thanks, Alyssa. Pleasure to be here. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody joining in. My name is Chris Germano. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of RBC to welcome you to Canada Business Talks, hosted by Canadian SME Magazine. From the moment you start your business, small business owners are not just entrepreneurs. You're also managers, marketers, customer service representatives, and financial planners. You juggle countless roles, balancing the books while crafting marketing strategies, solving operational problems, and delivering exceptional customer service. The range of responsibilities you handle daily is both impressive and demanding. As we look ahead to 2025, your efforts remind us that anything is possible with hard work, resilience, and a passion for what you do. In today's ever-evolving business landscape, we know that small business owners are balancing more than ever. You're working to recover from past disruptions while adapting to new realities, often with limited resources and support. You're the problem solvers, the innovators, and the community builders who persevere through challenges and seize opportunities. Your ability to adapt and manage so much is remarkable, but it should not mean you face these challenges alone. Recognizing the many hats you wear is a call to action for us all to provide assistance and encouragement you deserve and commit to being allies in your journey. That's why RBC is so proud to support the Canada Business Talk series. We were thrilled to see Canadian SME Magazine take the lead in bringing thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and our co-sponsors UPS, Constant Contact, IHG Business Edge, and Google together to create this important forum. We hope these engaging conversations will deliver great insights to help entrepreneurs successfully navigate the complexities of the business landscape. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome David Sinkinson, Chief Podcast Officer at Startup Different. And as Alyssa mentioned, Dave is a proven SaaS entrepreneur. As the co-founder and CEO of AppArmor alongside his brother, Dave bootstrapped the public safety software startup, and in February 2022, Rave Mobile Safety purchased AppArmor for $40 million. Later that same year, both Rave Mobile Safety and AppArmor were acquired by Motorola Solutions for $560 million. Now Dave has co-authored Startup Different and co-hosts the Startup Different podcast to help show entrepreneurs that there's another better way to build your business. Startup Different debunks startup myths, tackles some of the toughest challenges, and gives founders the tools to develop their business. This down-to-earth founder proves that making a successful startup has little to do with unicorns or 10 baggers, and instead focuses on a proven, different method for startup success. I'm looking forward to hearing Dave's journey towards becoming an entrepreneur and how he navigated the world of tech startups. Once again, I'd like to thank Canadian SME Magazine, our co-sponsors, and all of you for joining us today for a program that uncovers and celebrates inspiring stories and the individuals like Dave Sinkinson who make them real. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Alyssa.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, I'm very excited too. So let's bring in David Sinkinson. How are you?
I'm
Thanks
great.
for joining us.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you so much for having me. That was quite the introduction. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually like a little bit nervous for myself here all of a sudden. So.
Right? Like there's the red carpet beneath you all of a sudden, and
Yeah.
like the spotlight is on you, and you need to make a speech or something.
Yeah. I've got a lot of things to say. No, but I do really appreciate being here. And I'm looking forward to just talking about entrepreneurship. That's kind of what I do. So. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, numbers kind of stand out. And as I was reading that first introduction, you know, that $40 million number is a pretty big one. And I'm wondering if that was on your vision board. I would love to hear the story behind first of all, founding AppArmor. Actually, I know a little bit about it because I've been listening to your podcast and just got your book. But yeah, I'd love you to share with our viewers, you know, what were some of the key milestones that led to this amazing $40 million acquisition?
Yeah, I think every entrepreneur, I think, sort of has two things they think about when they start their business. One is usually and hopefully is what's the impact you're going to make with your business. So that is whatever you do, how are you going to deliver that in such a way that it actually like moves the world forward in a better way, in a way that you kind of have a vision for, and then obviously aligns with what your customers want. And then in addition to that, there's obviously kind of this like financial element too. Wouldn't it be nice if someday I sold for a bunch of money, or maybe we IPO'd, or whatever, insert your ideal financial end goal. But these objectives will definitely vary from person to person. For me, I definitely didn't have on like my startup bingo card, I'm going to sell for $40 million. It was kind of like our objective was to deliver a lot of value and go from there. And our company, so we're a little bit different how we sort of started out, but we were brothers. We bootstrapped the company. So that is, we didn't go for any venture capital funding or anything like that. We did win a grant for $15,000. So that is the extent of our investment. No equity was given up for that $15,000, I should point out as well. We deployed this app product that was basically like, rather than making one mobile app, we made an assembly line for mobile apps. So we created these custom branded, so customer branded mobile apps that were branded to universities and colleges that were built around public safety. And sort of the issue was that on many university and college campuses, they have these blue light poles, these emergency poles, and a lot of those things break, and they're also quite expensive. And also, of course, on campus, the response by campus security or campus police is considerably faster than the municipal police generally in many circumstances. So we kind of went to market with this idea, mostly word of mouth expansion. It was one of like 5 different side hustles that I had on the go at the start. And we ended up being the winner. We got plenty of traction in the US. We kind of struggled to get, we had plenty of traction in Canada, kind of struggled to get into the United States. Then we, over a couple of years, made some traction there. We kind of bought our first customer. If you want to explore that, we can. And then we sort of proliferated our product. So we added more stuff, more things we could sell that was complementary to our main mobile app product. And that, increased our deal size 5, 6, 7 times. And then we started stepping on toes of our competitors, particularly established American competitors, one of them being Rave Mobile Safety. And we can go into if you want, we can go into the sort of the back and forth of what it looks like to be acquired. But basically, we actually rejected them at first, and a year later, we accepted them after they doubled the offer to $40 million. And then we sold the business and then transitioned into that company that was 10 times our size. And then we kind of knew that the private equity group that owned Rave was probably going to be selling it off, in a year or two, because that's what private equity does after about 5 years. And so they sold them off to Motorola Solutions. for $560 million. And we did, I do not have $560 million personally. We did participate a little bit, but it was a pretty astronomically large transaction in the context of our original one. But it was still really, really fun to participate in, a little bit less stressful because it wasn't exactly just our company at that point. So
yes, I mean, and looking back, I mean, I'm sure you do, as every success story involves some sort of mistakes along the way. But as you describe all those milestones, it sounds like you held out for the right amount of money. Your timing was just so, or is there more behind the scenes than what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, like you got to get lucky in some of this. So I think, of course, so I made plenty of wrong decisions. Is the first thing I'll say. We definitely screwed stuff up. I think as we went on, we got better. We got more confident in what we were doing. That's actually part of why we wanted to write the book, to instill in some people some confidence around your decision making. That be careful about buying into that like conventional wisdom. But I think over time, sort of what happened is the market really moved in our favor. So when we sold was 2021, early 2022. So if you remember that moment in time, obviously during the pandemic, so the world was crazy. We had done basically a very successful pivot of our business into sort of more health-focused features in our mobile apps at these universities and colleges. Everything from screening to get onto campus to vaccine verification when they sort of rolled around, which was a really big deal. And so we had one of the best quarters in our company's history, but we sort of bet on ourselves though in that moment. So that was important that we did that. And secondly is that we didn't like the original offer we got. We found it was very constrictive and also didn't give us a great multiple of our revenues or of our EBITDA, however you or so profit, however you're going to look at it. And the net result was that we thought we could do better. And then the last thing is that you'll remember that money back then was crazy cheap. So a lot of American and Canadian firms were on an acquiring spree, particularly when their portfolio companies like Rave Mobile Safety, it was a portfolio company of this company called TCV or Technology Crossover Ventures. They were an early investor in Netflix, so they're doing just fine. So they were in a great position to spend money and to sort of meet this gap, because what happened is their portfolio company Rave was struggling, and we were doing about 400% year-over-year growth. So when you put the numbers together, it makes everything kind of look a little bit rosier, and I think made Rave more appealing to their sale afterwards. So there's a couple of reasons why this happened. One of them, though, is definitely financial.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you said something earlier. I want to go in like 10 different directions, but
sure.
Let's start with, you said you bought your first customer. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, so that was our first American customer. So I will say, for many startups, particularly in markets that are emerging, it's difficult for customers early on to really understand what it is you do. So quite frankly, you have to go in there with like a really good price point. Chris, who's my co-founder and brother who's not here, would say you have to give them this sweetheart deal. And I'm a sales guy at heart, so I'm kind of loath of the sweetheart deal. I want to get as much as I can out of every deal. But what you got to realize early on is that it's not actually the value of the contract that matters. It's that you have that customer on your platform and their referenceability and their willingness to do case studies and these kinds of things, being like power users of your system. And so in Canada, we didn't have too much trouble with this because basically my origin story was I was sitting on a committee at a major university in Ontario here that was concerned with campus safety, and we did an audit of those blue light poles, and many of them were broken. So I was in the right place at the right time. I just was able to pitch the right person in that moment and said, hey, if I can solve this problem for you, would you pay for it, even if it's not that much money? And so that's what happened. But when we went to the United States, we had about 30, 40, 50 odd universities and colleges on our platform. But none of them were American, but two of them were American, like very small schools with almost no national brand. But then we went into the state of Florida, and there's the fabulous University of Florida, one of my favorite schools in the world now, because they ended up working with us. But and they have that famous like Gator, the University of Florida Gator. And we went in there, and normally for a school that size, we would have been talking like $30,000, $40,000 a year or something like that. We ended up going into that situation because it was competitive. That basically students had built an app and they were abandoning it because they wanted to do other things. And so they needed a new provider. And so I didn't want to lose this deal. So I came in and I said, we'll do it for $3,000 a year. So 10% of what we would normally charge. And that seems crazy, but that was really the springboard that got us into the rest of the American market. Because after we did that, we could go almost anywhere in the United States and say, by the way, the University of Florida Gators work with us. Here's their app. Isn't it awesome? And they pushed us in a good way too, in terms of product development. They helped us build new features that were going to be important for the market in general. So buying that early customer, so giving them a crazy discount, was actually incredibly important in our success in getting any market traction in the United States. And just one last piece here. When we looked at a lot of founders think about their total addressable market or their TAM. And for us, if we were looking at Canada, Canada was like 150 higher education institutions. In the United States, it was 7,000. So we needed to get into that market for our business really to be viable. And obviously, in the end, interesting for acquisition hungry companies.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're going to be playing the long game, the short game. You've got to have a real sort of 360 view on what you want to accomplish. Now, tell me, as far as co-founders go, I'm very interested in how we were talking about this before we even began recording, I and Maheen, who is producing this, was like, I would not be going into business with my brother. Most people would not be going into business with their brother, but many of us are looking for a co-founder. So can you speak on that? And what should we be looking for in terms of compatibility when it comes to a co-founder?
Sure. Well, I'll take the brother part first.
Yes,
and then
please
I'll
do take the brother part. We're interested.
So for brother, so I will say that. So what's the difference between founding a company with your brother or a sibling or maybe your partner or whatever versus another person, like a third party who's going to come into the game later? And the difference that I always felt, and I've talked to other founders like this, I'll tell you a story after, but that you could go to bed at night knowing that your co-founder had your back no matter what, because you're going to see them at Christmas coming up. You're going to see them at birthday parties, like they're going to be around, right? And so there is some element of that. You could really, really trust your own family. At least I felt that way, and I had that relationship with my brother. And interestingly, too, my brother Chris is 10 years older than me, so we're like I was a Hail Mary for a girl in our family. We're three boys, and so I was late in the game. I think I was supposed to be Catherine, but anyway. So I'll say that, and we actually, we on our show started different. We interviewed Mehdi Basiri, who's one of the co-founders of Applyboard, one of Canada's unicorns. It's a $4 billion company, and he actually founded that company with two other brothers, one of them being his twin. And he said sort of the same thing. You can always really trust. There's a built-in level of trust that comes with a sibling or a family member that doesn't really come necessarily with other folks. Now, when you're looking for a co-founder, though, that's not to say you can't do it. In fact, obviously, most businesses are not formed with your family or siblings or whatever. So how do you do this? A couple of different things. First, what you're looking for, obviously, you want to have some sort of delineation of skills. So on the one hand, my brother is a coder. He's very tech savvy. He's risk averse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A big set of skills. I tolerate risk a bit more. I'm marketing and sales. I do more around like leading the company. I did all the HR stuff, which I think Chris would say, even though he's not here, he would say he's not great at. So that was really important. But what was fascinating, and I think is the thing you're actually looking for, is some degree of overlap. Okay, so if you think of like your Venn diagram, you actually do want some skills that overlap, but not like your primary function. So you don't want two salespeople starting a company. That's a recipe for failure. But what can make a lot of sense is, in my case, so I'll just go to our example, is I can understand code. I can't write code, but I can like read it. I can get what's happening. This made me a better salesperson because I could have conversations with Chris. I could look at the code and I could understand what's happening. And then when I went to talk to customers, I could explain what is or isn't possible and really be able to back it up, or maybe even be able to think, okay, maybe we could do this if we just made a change here, 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 here. Conversely, Chris can sell. Okay, he can sell. He just tends to give away the farm. He just really doesn't charge enough because his bias is he wants to have people use the software. Just very common for CTOs and sort of the technical founder type is they're looking for people to use the thing and enjoy the product, so to speak. So because he could understand sales, this made Chris a much better CTO. Because he could understand, okay, this is the way the market's going. We can't just build the product in a vacuum. We need to build it in a way that's going to get us more deals. And this is actually something we talk about too, that we're kind of every SaaS company or every business really out there is a sales organization, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. You have to sell the thing to accomplish your mission. And so I think having this overlapping element in founders is actually very, very important and a real asset. And it was certainly an asset for us when we went to market.
I love that. I've never thought about the overlapping piece, but that makes complete sense. Yes. Now, how do you know? I don't know if you and your brother gained consensus on this, and you can maybe speak to the experience with this particular company. But how do you know when you've got a great idea? I mean, the world is full of great ideas. We all have these light bulb moments. How do you know that it's something that's going to gain some purchase, as it were?
That's a great question. I guess the first thing I would say, just I'm going to attack the premise of your question for a second, which is that you don't have to always have a killer idea. Like I would say the better light bulb kind of approach in some cases makes a lot of sense. You know, these incremental innovations. When we talk about the world of innovations, there's basically two kinds. There's sustaining innovations and there's disruptive innovations. Everybody knows what disruptive is. Netflix versus Blockbuster. I don't know, Dyson versus Hoover. You know, think about or Uber versus taxis. The sustaining innovations are when like the bigger companies can adapt to it more easily. So like TikTok came out with Reels, and that was kind of their thing. All of a sudden, everybody's got Reels. YouTube's got Reels, Facebook's got Reels, so on and so forth. So the one thing I would say is that when you're looking to have an incremental improvement, just make sure it's not a sustaining innovation, but it can still be I would almost call it like a smaller disruptive idea can still work, or just doing something better can work really well. Particularly like regionally or under really specific circumstances. But in terms of like how to validate your idea is actually working, it's actually pretty easy. Are people paying for it or willing to pay for it or willing to engage with you in a conversation about it and potentially pay for it? And then for you specifically is, can you make it profitable? Profit is the validation from the market that your idea is worth pursuing. If you can find a way to scale your idea in a way that delivers real value for customers and also is paying you and you still got extra at the end of the day, you're doing well. You're also, and it's also an indication too that you can scale that business. That it gives you that additional capital will help you invest in systems to help make your business better. So a lot of the time, some people think, well, I got to sit in a room and I'm gonna like think really hard. Maybe I turn the lights down, because it actually does show, by the way, if you turn the lights down, sometimes you're actually more creative. But which is kind of bizarre. But yeah, but so if you get into this like Zen state, maybe I'll think of like a killer idea and I'm gonna be a billionaire or whatever. Like chances are somebody else is doing almost any idea you think of. So more of it is about the execution of this idea and your ability to drive to profit. That's when I think you have a more meaningful and like good idea that you can make into a really good business.
Right. And I mean, I guess to your point, if no one else is doing it, then there may also be a reason why no one else is doing it. Yeah.
Some people will, well, so there's two sides to that coin too. So on the one hand, some people might be like, okay, I have this great idea, but I'm not even going to Google it because I don't want to know if anybody else is doing it. I want to believe, that I got this. Yeah. And that's problematic. So you definitely want to make sure you're looking around and be honest with yourself. I have ideas all the time and I'm like, somebody's doing it. I had an idea for an app the other day and I was like, oh, wow, tons of people are already doing this. Great. Me too. Then I'm like, maybe I can use that app, right? So that's fine. So I think there's that component, but the other thing too, conversely, and this is a bit of a gray zone. People like black and white answers, but there's a lot of nuance in some of these early days in a business. And the nuance here is just sort of like, okay, so if there's nobody doing it, or rather on the contrary, if there are competitors, that's usually an indication that there's value in that market. Somebody's already willing to pay to do it. And maybe they're even venture capital funded. So they were able to convince somebody with a lot of money that this is also a good idea. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum. On the one hand, you almost want somebody to be doing it, but doing it poorly. That's your best case, because then you can go in, do it better, and capture that market from them.
Oh, I love that. So, okay, so that the idea I had last week and then I Googled it and someone else did it and they did it badly. Like literally you're talking about something that occurred to me last week. Yeah. Great. I'm encouraged. Okay.
You can do it.
I can do it. Okay. So that is kind of one myth debunked. What I love about this book, which as I said, I have picked up, is you do talk about debunking a lot of startup myths. And I think it makes it a more approachable process for people. So can you share what some of the other common misconceptions are that founders have about building a successful business?
The myths run the gamut too, from like the early days of the business to even like after we were selling the business. There's a couple of big ones that I really like. And the first one I want to attack is that funding or getting early seed funding is some sort of validation for your business. So let's just talk stats for a second. So 70% of startups fail. You can count this differently. Some people you'll go on another podcast and they'll say 90%. You'll go on a different show and they'll say 60%. It depends how you count it, but let's just go with 70% for today. So 70% of startups fail. But if you actually look at the data around venture capital funding, about 75% of startups fail, venture-backed ones, after about 4 years. And why is it after 4 years? It's because the funding runs out. So funding isn't always a great validation for your business model. The other thing is that sometimes funding puts businesses in a weird place where they are trying to expand too quickly in a market that's not ready for them. Like in many cases, especially with emerging technologies, you need to give it time. People won't adopt things too quickly. We were in a super slow moving market. It takes universities about 6 months to make a sales decision. Like our sales cycle was 6 months long on average. We'd have some that were like 2 years. So with this in mind, you have to be sure that your idea, you're not just like trying to boost it really quickly, because that strategy doesn't always work. There's a bunch of other things. We could talk for a whole hour on my feelings on early funding for businesses. But the long and short of it is that if you can bootstrap your business, you should, because it also focuses on optimizing your systems, because you're going to spend your money better than you're going to spend someone else's. You're going to build more systems internally to make you more efficient, and you're going to focus on profit, particularly on a metric that I like that's not talked about too often, which is profit per employee. How many staff do you have, and how profitable are you on a per employee basis? Because this will make sure you optimize from a scaling perspective. So that's one big one. Another one, another two. I'll give you two more that I really like. Yeah. Next is just for any of the SaaS people in the house, or actually this kind of can be broad, but it's particularly SaaS, software as a service. Just sorry, I actually, somebody told me the other day they didn't know what SaaS was, and I was like, oh, geez.
And as a leadership communications coach, I'm always like, let's talk about what the acronym means. And I broke my own rule. Yes, thank you for sharing that.
No, that's cool. Software as a service. So, think like Dropbox is one of the earliest SaaS companies. When we think about this, there's a tendency to believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So particularly if your company has been building something for a long time, after a while, you're going to run into what's called legacy issues. And the legacy issues are like your product early on has some piece of code or something or some function or whatever that for some reason stops working as well or stops working entirely. So for us, we actually, our story is that one day, we got an email from our upstream coding provider, and they were like, oh yeah, good news. We are shutting down the platform in 8 months. Good luck, God bless. And we were like, wow, we have 2 million lines of code behind on this platform, and you really can't build on an unsupported platform. Like you always need upstream support in a in a software environment. So it's not that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's like, if it ain't broke, it will be. Someday it will break. And the real danger of this is that for small companies, when you go from we're innovating our product to making cool things to listening to customer feedback to, oh God, we have to fix something that was working before, we have to invest a lot of time in it, you actually start acting like a bigger company, but not in a good way. And you actually lose the ability to be agile in the market and quickly innovate and meet in market needs, which is like kind of what small companies are all about. If we can't do that, we're basically a big company, but with none of the resources, which is a really, really bad situation to be in. So be aware of those legacy issues. Now, the last thing I'll get to is the alpha myth. Everybody loves this one. So the alpha myth, you think of like a workplace alpha. I think most people like picture like a gorilla, I don't know, like with a tie and a briefcase or something. And you think of somebody who's like super aggressive, right? The super aggressive type, they're kind of like running around the office. They're, everybody just sort of imagines them getting deals done and getting, moving forward, but they're jerks. Like they're hard to work with. They're probably pretty obnoxious. They have very strong opinions, and they kind of are sort of counter to what we call psychological safety, the ability to be able to ask questions and be curious in meetings. And what's interesting is most people think that this is just what it is in nature. So the first thing is that's wrong. So in nature, actually, chimpanzees, which is what this term is based off of, this primatologist named Franz de Waal coined it. And actually, the leaders of many troops, the best leaders, the ones that are most successful, are those that have the highest amount of empathy, that build coalitions with other monkeys, that hug other monkeys. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but it makes a lot of sense. You can make this connection from like, would you want to work with a crummy boss or with one that actually cares about you? And then the second piece is that they don't actually drive better results on the entire business. So they might get more deals like for themselves, like personally, but because of their effect on everyone else around them, they tend to drag the enterprise down. So the net result is actually a less positive outcome. It's actually bad for the business. They are basically a toxic employee. And instead, what you should be looking to do is be like this new modern alpha, which is about leading with empathy, caring about people. We always used to say we would invest in people so that they would invest in the business. And that's what we did. So even though we were a team of 20 people, that led to a $40 million exit. And a lot of it, I think, was that we got a lot out of our staff through system optimization, but also through just believing in them and coaching them and working with them, as opposed to barking orders.
Oh, you're speaking my language. This is music to my ears because I am all about emotional intelligence in the workplace. And
Yeah.
it amazes me that this is actually still a myth. And so I'm glad you're bringing it to light. But I think having been in many different workplaces and people coming to me and sharing their problems, most of them have to do with that alpha male kind of mentality. I said alpha male. Alpha.
You know what? You're fine though. Most of the time it is a man. I will say that for sure. But it's
oh boy,
like,
thanks for saving me on that one. It was a Freudian slip.
It was accurate. So I don't think it's such a big deal. But for sure, I think emotional intelligence is one of those things that's super overlooked by founders. That and like corporate culture, like your organizational culture, it's just so overlooked because you're so focused on the thing you're doing in the market. When if you actually look inward, you'll get better outward results. If you get your house in order, you'll be doing much better off in the market, is what the data shows. So
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's supported by data for sure. Now, I want to go back to you were talking about bootstrapping and you gave some advice. Do you have any more advice for people who are thinking, yeah, you know what, I want to take this approach as opposed to seeking venture capital?
Yeah.
Any advice?
So the reality when you bootstrap your business, and for folks watching today or listening or what have you, there might be, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go out to a party. You're going to hang out with people. It's Christmas time, so there's a million parties right now. And people are going to say, what do you do? And you're going to explain that you work at a startup, you have your own business, you whatever, however you position it. And then probably they'll have one of two questions coming up next. So it's either how many staff do you have, which is a whole other myth, or how much money do you have? So there's this like base level expectation that funding is that is some sort of validation or something that's good for your business in general. And I'm here to tell you that's more or less wrong. Now, the only caveat I say more or less, the only caveat is some people actually need funding for their businesses. If you are refining steel in a new and exciting way, then you're going to need some money. If you have a physical product like hardware, yeah, you're probably going to need a little bit of money to get going. But otherwise, there are ways to bootstrap your business, almost no matter what your business is, that can lead you to success. And I'm not just talking like us here. Like there's people who've been way more successful than us that have bootstrapped. They kind of think Shopify, think GitHub, think Vuori. They make comfy pants, and that's actually like a product company too. Like so, it's interesting because the first thing I want to address is that you really, really don't need funding to get to your business dreams. It's not required. So how do you actually bootstrap your company? It's a pretty natural thing, although it's a little bit uncomfortable. So I have to explain my context first, because that might help shed light on your situation. Viewer, not you necessarily, right. Alyssa.
No, maybe though.
But basically, so we had a few different startups on the go. So we had 4 or 5 different products. Those products were all generating very small amounts of money, $10,000 to $20,000 a year. Probably all in all, we probably had like somewhere between 70 to 80 to maybe 100K, depending on the year, of like additional revenue on the side. And we would take, that's not all profit, but we would take whatever we could from that. And rather than paying ourselves, we would invest that into the product lines that were doing well. So we basically had 2 horses by the end of it. A whole other ebook platform that I'm not going to bother getting into today, and our AppArmor product. And so we would take the money and we put it into AppArmor, and we kind of could reinvest, and we steadily grew that business. You don't have to do it that way necessarily, but we found that that was obviously very, very successful. And that gave us the opportunity to continue to grow that product line. And it also gave us full control. So rather than giving up any equity, which is sacred, by the way, some founders early on that have this weird tendency to want to give away like 10, 20% of equity for something. Like, don't do it, especially for funding. Yeah, look up the term, the weighted average cost of capital, or WACC. And it's totally whack if you if you try to get equity early. It's actually some of the most expensive money that you can possibly get. And so there are other ways to do this. You can look for loans from banks. We have some sponsoring here today. That's a good way to do it. Maybe some friends and family to help get you into the game. And that's in some cases like no strings attached money necessarily, or very low commitment sort of stuff. Or you just push through and you do put some of your own money into it. Maybe you have to leverage something that you own, but it's short-term pain for long-term gain. If you really believe in this idea, it's the key to going all in. And actually, I mentioned in the book that, as an example, James Dyson created over 5,000 versions of his vacuum that is now the infamously famous Dyson vacuum. and all of his own money into it, his own money into getting patents to protect it, his own money into lawyers to protect that patent. Like a lot of his own money went into that. And the end result, though, was a humongous upswing for him. Now, I don't want you to do anything too reckless. I'm not a financial advisor, but I do think you can take a calculated risk. You understand your business better than anyone else. Is there opportunity up market? Do you think you can capture it? And do you think you can go about this without having to raise funds from other sources? And that's what it's about. Now, I will say one last thing on this too, because I've been thinking a lot about bootstrapping lately, because I'm Mr. Bootstrapper apparently, which is that I think AI has made bootstrapping a particularly easier thing than 10 years ago. And you can have a 10-person, you can have a 2-person company that swings like a 20-person company. You can have a 10-person company that swings like a 50-person company. If you understand how to use AI to automate some of your business functions, like I was listening to a different podcast the other day, and a gentleman was talking about how in his company, when somebody reaches out to them, so an inbound lead comes through their website, their AI agent that they didn't have a ton of coding experience, but that they sort of modified, basically would take that lead in, read their domain, go to their website, see what they were about, come back, look for their competitors, find their competitor information, look at the company's product information, craft an email, and send it. Okay.
Oh my God.
This is like a fundamental sales function, the SDR function or BDR function, depending on your market, of a huge cost center of so many companies. And that's like one example. And this is just like an automated function. So I do think there are more tools now that actually make it easier to bootstrap than maybe previously.
That's like a whole book unto itself. Like maybe that's your next book, is to write, what are some of the prompts you can give your
it's
your AI.
What can you build and what can you prompt? I think it's so exciting. I will say, here's another cheap piece of advice. I love AI stuff. I think it's very fascinating. I'm very much not the Terminator guy, and I hope I don't rue these words someday. There's no Skynet.
We're recording. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going. But I would say, immerse yourself in different AI tools. I use Perplexity for search because I think it's faster than Google and generally better. I use or Yahoo or whatever you use. I use Claude for a lot of business stuff, which is an incredibly powerful tool, and Chat GPT, and I have my own assistant GPTs, some of which even help us with our podcast. So like there's just so much value to be had, but get out there and expose yourself to them, try to do stuff with them, and you'll kind of realize the unbelievable potential of these tools to optimize your business or potentially even be your product, depending on what you're trying to do.
Love it. Love it. And that takes me to my next question nicely, which is what trends or shifts do you see in the startup ecosystem, maybe in addition to that? And how can founders adapt to thrive in these rapidly changing conditions?
Yeah. So I will say that I'll build a bit more on the AI point for a second, just a little bit different.
Please, yeah.
So the thing is that there are a lot of toolkits. There are like free versions or open source API tools you can also take advantage of. That, like for instance, Meta it's all open source. Their stuff for their AI agents. So it's worthwhile exploring.
Sure.
So I would say that's an important thing. I think no matter what you do for your next business, it's very important that you have some component that utilizes artificial intelligence. There's just so much to be had there, and well beyond just like the efficiency of your day. A lot of the time when you hear people talk about AI, they're like, well, it's going to be our co-pilot and it's going to write emails for it. Like, yeah, it will, but it's already doing that. Like you have to think a little bit deeper. And the only way you're going to get there is by playing with these tools some more. The other thing I'll say is in 2023, last year, we went, or was it this year? No, it's 2024, excuse me. We went to the Collision Conference, so Chris and I, and we interviewed founders there. It was actually very fun. But one thing that was really fascinating to me was the number of founders who were also saying that, and they were mostly SaaS, software as a service, but most of them were saying, oh yeah, I don't need funding and I'm not even going to try and go for it. Like there's a lot more of an angle towards bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is a lot more doable now as well. So that's a second point that I would leave you with, folks, today, because it's one of those things where you kind of feel like, am I doing this right? Is this good? Most of the time, I think bootstrapping is a solid decision to make, at least in the short term. And you can always reassess later if you do need capital for something.
Sure.
And then broadly speaking, I would say that maybe combining these ideas, kind because I kind of stole my own answer by talking about AI so much, is that
That's okay.
look at, if you're looking for a new idea and you're spitballing ideas, for one thing, AI is a really good tool to actually spitball these ideas off of and still
Yes.
doing it within the confines of your own home, especially those that are like web enabled. So those that are doing web searches as they look things up. Highly recommend that as an approach. But then furthermore is my general focus these days is, and because I like to say to people I'm between businesses, I'm certainly going to start something again because I really enjoy business. I really enjoy the journey. Is that I like to think about how can I take AI and apply it to a traditional market. Like just go crazy for a second. How can I take AI and apply it to landscaping? How can I make that more efficient? Like, I don't know, but this is kind of something that I want to attack and think about. How can we take traditional industries and do them in new and exciting ways? And that's where you're going to find some of the avenues towards disruption.
Yes, love that. You were talking about spitballing with I do that quite a bit with ideas I have. I have yet to have ChatGPT tell me it's a terrible idea. I mean, like it's very supportive.
Yes,
But
very
I
nurturing.
guess it's all about the questions you're asking instead of like, is it a good idea? It's more like, where do you see the problems with this?
Well, I mean, it's a loaded question to be like, is it a good idea? Right? I kind of,
Yeah.
I think,
Like asking a
I,
spouse, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, so I'll tell you what, my wife will tell me if it's a bad idea, and I love her to bits. She's
Okay,
amazing,
good.
but she's just super honest with me on this stuff, and it's great. But
That is
I
good.
think that I think that's a good note of caution. I wouldn't, ultimately, AI is just going to help you do a very surface level evaluation. The real way to prove if something is going to work is you have to take it to market. You have to try to pitch people on it, see if they'll pay you money for it, see if on our show, we interview many founders as well. And it is very fascinating to me. In many cases, these founders are in positions where they're in the meeting and they say to someone, this doesn't exist now, but you're having this problem. If I built something to address that problem, would you pay me for it? And so much of, I think, of quality ideation for new businesses just comes from exposure to the market. Like, you really just need to be out there and do it and see how it goes. One last thing here is Chris and I love to place small bets. So, don't necessarily, you have an idea, don't mortgage your house just on the idea. Maybe, maybe you just max out a credit card a little bit more than normal and go and try and go to market with that and see what kind of traction or interest you get. Or, hey, just pick up the phone or message people on LinkedIn and say, hey, I can see you're in this industry. I have this product. Would you be willing
Yeah.
to try it? So,
Those are 6 words that could change your whole business and your whole trajectory. Would you pay me for it? Like, I
yeah,
love that.
100%. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And people can be afraid to ask that question too. And I
Yeah.
think that, look, you've got to be willing to do that if you obviously want to have a crack at going from this is a hobby of mine to this is a business. So,
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's assume, people are listening to this advice and build their business to the point where it might get acquired. So, how did your experience navigating these 2 acquisitions in 1 year shape your perspective on building and then exiting a company?
yeah. I think a couple of different things. So, first is that one thing that founders, I think, sometimes get tripped up on when they're building their business, you have to make it so the business serves you. You don't serve the business. And so, what do I mean by that? You have to have systems in place that basically make it so that if you weren't there working that day, for the most part, the business would continue doing its things. And there are just a lot of mentalities, particularly among solo founders. Not to throw anybody under the bus, because being a solo founder is really, really hard, and I get that. But you really need to be able to sort of like go to the market and take this idea and then be able to scale it in such a way that allows you to kind of be able to take a day off without a massive consequence. And building these systems and pushing towards optimization and profitability is incredibly important. And when you come around to the point when somebody's interested in buying you, they're going to look at your numbers. They're going to look at a couple of different things. So one, they're going to be interested in your cap table. So your capitalization tables, that is who owns the company effectively, how many shares are owned by who. So if you've done an equity raise or you've gone for venture capital or what have you, you might only be a 10, 20% shareholder, which is no fun. I'll tell you that right now. That's why we wanted to hold on to so much equity. They'll also look at basically all your numbers, all your contracts, all your financials, absolutely everything. Due diligence is a crazy process. They will have an army of lawyers, and so will you, and you'll have an army of accountants, and so will you, and you will go through absolutely everything. So aside from scaling the business to make sure it can operate without you, is that just be forthcoming about either dealing with those skeletons in your closet or telling the acquirer about some of the major issues you're having. So some people have a tendency to want to hide some of these things, but transparency and that level of a negotiation is incredibly important. And for us, so as I mentioned, we had our offer double. So we went from 20 million to 40 million. And during the 20 million offer, we learned a lot of things as to what they were like looking for, what their key metrics were. And you can actually go online and you can find on many websites around for venture capital firms or what have you, sort of like a checklist, like the due diligence checklist of things you ought to have in order when you're trying to sell your company. These can be very, very helpful to at least be a starting point as to like, okay, I got to get my ducks in a row. And so what we learned though was that we had some stuff we had to address. And so in that year's time between the first offer and the second offer, which we ended up taking, we spent a lot of time improving our systems and solidifying our contracts in some cases with our customers, and just kind of making things really streamlined and consistent. So then by the time that we actually did sell, the transition process into the new company was really good. Now, I will say on the transition into the company, and sorry, I'm talking so much today, but
no, that's why you're here.
Yeah, it's true. I guess it is. That's fair. On the transition into the new company, one thing that was really important for me to understand was that I needed to build bridges between my team and the other one. And as the organization being acquired, sometimes you definitely just don't want to be standoffish in any way with the new firm. And this can be really difficult because in some cases you've built the business in a very particular way. It's really your baby, but you have to try to slowly let go of that. But building those bridges is essential because your team is going to follow you across that bridge. If you don't make the effort to go first and lead by example and show, hey, these people are okay. They used to be our competitors, but guess what? We're all friends now. Like, you need to show them that. And if you don't do that, you're seriously jeopardizing the success of that transition and by nature, some of the representations and warranties that you made during the actual sale itself. So a couple of important things there, but I think what I'm trying to say is you got to lead by example, particularly after the acquisition. And then lastly is that now that you've got to that point, you can say, great news, everyone. I'm on my way out, but I've built all these systems, so the business is going to keep running itself. And then you're on your merry way and you're doing something new. And it'll feel really weird when that happens too. There's a big identity loss after you sell your company. But it was one of those things that, I mean, the business still functions now. It's still sold. The product is still sold in Motorola. You know, they signed up a bunch of interesting clients. Like, it still works. Everything's still there. And I think that's a testament to the way we built that business.
Yeah, I mean, on every level. And when you first started answering this question, I was thinking, well, there's the emotional intelligence piece again, right? As you build these bridges, as you create these businesses and you make sure that you build the systems in, it sounds like that EI was there all the way through, along with the AI, as it were.
Most of the way through. I'd say actually, so early on, here's a fun side note, is that we had a culture failure actually early in our business where we tried to build our culture. It's a chapter in the book, so you will get there soon. I know you.
I will get there. Huh?
You'll get there soon. It's pretty early on. I think chapter 2. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, I'm on chapter 1. I only got it Saturday. Amazon's a little late these days, you know. Anyway, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's really fine. So the culture failure was basically, we were like, hey, why don't we just go out there and copy somebody else's culture? So we copied Netflix because we're like, hey, we want to be a billion-dollar company. We want to be a super successful. We have nothing in common with Netflix. We didn't work like Netflix works. We had all these different problems. And it led to us losing all our staff. Basically, either people had to be let go because they just like couldn't deal with the culture, and we couldn't enforce it because we didn't understand it, like not well enough. Like, it was just not how we worked. Or they left to do their own thing because they didn't believe in what we were doing. We didn't give people a purpose, didn't give them a mission, something to strive towards. Founders miss this a lot too. And so I think that after that experience, that's when I kind of just said, okay, we did something wrong, like pretty colossally wrong. I don't think we were mean to people, but we didn't exactly do a good job inspiring them either. And so now it's an opportunity to step back and go, okay, how do we build culture? How do we have a good ecosystem? How do we promote psychological safety? How do we do things that make this a fun place to work? And I think that really the biggest transition was from being like a manager to a coach of people and helping guide them and helping them work through problems and giving them autonomy and giving them ownership and giving them mastery in their work. And I think that was a huge change for us. Once we started doing that, we had years where we wouldn't lose any staff. which is like unheard of. We kept a tiny team, like 20-person team together. Nobody leaves because it's a good company to work at. Everybody enjoys themselves. It's fun, and we have a mission. So
yeah, and proving that whole idea of failing fast, failing forward, and failing frequently. Although you didn't get the frequently piece in, I don't think, but that's okay, right?
We failed some stuff, but I think it was a huge moment for us. I remember even like turning to Chris and being like, "Are we done?" Like, of course we would. We still had revenue and everything. Like, we still had customers. The difference was like we had to do all the work again, and that was really deflating. And it was like one of the many like gut punches in being an entrepreneur. So
sure, yeah. I mean, it's a ride for sure. And I know we're running short on time, but I did want to ask you, and this again leads beautifully to the last question, which is, looking back as we are doing, how has this journey shaped you, not just as a leader, but as an individual? Are there some really valuable lessons that stand out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's probably three big things that I would take away from the journey. And guess what? There's a lot of emotional intelligence in it, so heads up for that. So first, I think one of the things that served us really well too was trying to be as humble as possible, like a certain level of humility. One thing that you'll see too is founders, particularly after they get a little bit of funding, or perhaps they reach their first million in top line revenue or whatever, they have this kind of like moment where you can like lose your mind. It's just, you start to drink your own Kool-Aid. And I think that's when it gets really, really dangerous, because that kind of behavior will be reflected in your market success, because it kind of trickles down to your employees. All of a sudden, the vibe sort of changes. So I think ensuring you're humble, both in how you're acting in the market and how you're interacting with staff, is really, really important. And in particular, because founders have this weird tendency to believe that we have to always be right. And I think one thing that I've tried to focus on, and I didn't know it in so many words, but I read a book recently that kind of captured it for me, but it's kind of finding joy in being wrong. Okay. Because
I love that.
when you find joy in being wrong, you don't attack problems like, oh man, I don't want to look stupid. You're more like, what can we learn from this? How can we be better? How can we improve? And so that like baked in humility, I think is something that I've really pulled from the journey. Definitely empathy as well. I mentioned this throughout this talk today, but I think that investing emotionally in people gets the most out of them. And one of the business school things that like learnings that I think that we get, I got my MBA from Queens. And one of the things that we learned in there is that, and this was a long time ago, so the teaching has likely changed. But back then they would say, try to avoid the tough conversations. Personal life stays at home and work lives at work. And we're way past that now. We're at a time where the personal issues you have to confront, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable, which is unnatural to some people. But you need to listen, and you need to help shoulder some of that burden. And guess what? If you're just thinking about the dollars and cents of it, you're going to get better productivity and output out of your employees if that's what you're worried about. But otherwise, you'll also just get to know your staff better and be able to work with them better, and they'll work with each other better if they feel as supported. And then lastly, the one thing that I really want to leave everyone with is that, there are ups and downs of the entrepreneurial journey, but don't forget to enjoy that journey. I have days I really miss being able to go and see the team and be excited about what we're doing and passionate about helping people. And now that that's gone, and especially early on, there was definitely an identity crisis. And now I'm very happy to report that by helping entrepreneurs through the book and through the podcast, I feel a lot better. But I think there's something to be said for make sure you enjoy that time running your business.
Oh, what a wonderful note to end on. David Sinkinson, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your input. You said you were talking too much, but you haven't talked enough. We'll have to do a part 2 at some point. So thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Yes. Now, David's story of bootstrapping success, strategic innovation, and transformative impact is truly inspiring. And I'm very certain that all of you watching and all of you small business owners have gained immense value from this experience. Your dedication, David, to challenging conventional startup myths and providing founders with practical tools to build their businesses differently is refreshing and empowering. Very grateful for David's time and the wisdom that he shared with us. So thanks, David, for being such an inspiring guest on Canada Business Talks. I'd like to also thank our partners. They're not our sparring partners. They're just our sponsors. RBC, our exclusive banking partner, our exclusive shipping partner, UPS, our exclusive email partner, Constant contact exclusive, our exclusive hospitality partner, IHG Business Edge, and our tech partner, Google. Now, quickly, I want to shine a spotlight on Canada's small businesses for a moment. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and we are thrilled to organize the Canadian SME Small Business Awards 2024, recognizing their outstanding contributions. These awards aim to honor the creativity, resilience, and success of entrepreneurs and small business owners who drive our economy forward. So this year, businesses with up to 500 employees can apply in up to five categories, each offering a unique chance to shine. Nominations are now extended until December 30th, 2024. So right to the end of the year. So don't miss the chance to celebrate your own business or nominate a visionary entrepreneur who inspires you. You can visit smeawards.ca for more details. That's smeawards.ca. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of Canada Business Talks. We are so grateful to have you as part of this journey to empower and inspire small business owners across Canada. Hearing stories like David's reminds us that there are many paths to building a successful business, and the power of determination, innovation, and a different approach can create lasting impact. I hope you found his insights as valuable and inspiring as we did. Your continued support fuels these conversations, and we are excited to bring you more impactful stories from trailblazing entrepreneurs. Thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Canada Business Talks. Stay inspired and keep building your vision for success. I'm Melissa Lansdale. Have a great day.